It's not about what you do, but it's about the impact you have when you're at your best. Why is like the thread that's been running through your life this entire time, even before you had the words for it.
I didn't see the next possibility until someone else spoke the word, and then it was like, oh, a something in the veil has dropped. You're listening to Solving for Joy. I'm your host, Dr. Chrissy Ott, a multi-boarded integrative physician and professional certified life and career coach. This podcast is about joy, what it means, how we find it, and the creative ways people are solving for it in their own lives. I'm so glad you're here. Hello, my friends. I am here for the first time with my behind the scenes counterpart and partner in crime, Kelsey Vaughn. Kelsey is such an important part of the work that I do in the world and such an important part of making this podcast what it has been. And I had an experience with Kelsey that I wanted to talk about on the podcast. So I asked if she would be willing to come out from behind the backstage curtain. Kelsey is an advocate for many things and has recently undertaken some of Simon Sinek's work, in particular, doing a why discovery related to his book, Start With Why. So I would love it, Kelsey, if you would just introduce yourself and your context a little bit and kind of how we got here. And what I hope that listeners will enjoy today is a bit of understanding what the why process is about, why somebody might find their why, not to be duplicative. And then we'll talk about some of the things that we discovered in the process that you and I underwent this weekend.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Chrissy, for having me here. It's funny being on the other side of things, usually being behind the scenes. And I think how we got here really was just a lot of conversations, a lot of curiosity about what's actually underneath the work we're doing and why it matters. And not just what we're creating, but what's driving it. Over
Mhm.
time, that's naturally led into exploring this idea of why in a more intentional way. And I think what's been interesting about the why process is that it's not just about coming up with something new or different or trying to be unique. It's actually the
Mhm.
opposite. Yeah, it's about uncovering something it's been there the whole time and it feels very tied into this pursuit of joy.
I can't wait to get into the details of it a little bit with you. I want to go all the way back to when we first met. So, our meet cute involves a camp out at the school that our kids both attended. And we set up our tents next to each other and struck up polite conversation as you do with other parents at your kids' school. And then it just got kind of deep pretty quickly. And then I learned that you produced podcasts, and we were both like, I wonder if there might be something there. And I just love flashing back to that point because you never know who you're going
Mm.
to meet under what circumstance that is going to shape your output, your work, your place in the world. So it was a moment of delight, a moment of alignment that led to us in this moment of meaning. And as everyone who listens to the podcast regularly knows, I understand joy is the convergence of meaning, alignment, and delight. And as you were introducing me to the why discovery process, I was excited, exhilarated to lean into how I feel like this is another way to experience that meaning, alignment, delight framework. I mean, not that delight is necessarily built in, but you're watching the client for their rise and fall of energy,
Yeah.
which we might actually see as a dynamic indicator of where is their delight in what you're talking about. So Kelsey explained to me a little bit about the process and then started to ask me to go into story. Storytelling helps us uncover recurring themes in our life, and reflecting on those themes is sort of how we started to circle in and then close in closer and closer onto something that we might say is our why, our desired contribution in the world or our desired impact in the world.
Well,
And it's,
I
yes, correct me.
your
Please do.
your why is not something you are aspiring to have or desire to be. It's something that it lives within you. It already exists.
Yeah. It's kind of like an explanation rather than an aspiration.
Yeah, the way you utilize your why, there might be aspirations, and the theory behind why is that, yeah, that lives within you, and it's formed early in your Everybody's different. When I went through the
Mhm.
why discovery, like, training course that I did, there were a few of us that definitely agreed that we had a strong sense of our why from, like, a young age. And then there were
Mhm.
other folks in the course who were like, "How could you know your why when you're 9?" Like, they
Mhm.
so it but generally speaking, your why is probably fully formed by, I don't know, like, teen year or no later than
Mhm.
adulthood, early adulthood.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Tell us about the golden circle as part of this context. How does that fit in, Kelsey?
I don't know if you can see this, but we have the golden circle here. This is Simon Sinek's version, and, he likes to reference the golden circle as like a three-legged stool. They're all equally important. You have your why, you have your how, and you have your what. We always start with why. Our why is our purpose, cause, or belief that drives you, like why you get up in the morning, that thing that really gets you going. Our why lives in our limbic brain. The limbic brain is responsible for all the feelings, behavior, decision making. And sometimes in the why process, it can be difficult to put words to what your why is because the limbic brain is not responsible for language. And so it totally makes sense that it's difficult. And then a part of the golden circle that we get into after the why is your how. And that's your unique talents that make you special. And then your what's are the actions you take towards achieving your why. So I was talking about earlier, yeah, you could have aspirations based off your why.
When you're doing a why discovery process, you kind of invite someone to start telling a story about their past, especially about their early life, and then sort of let them go wherever they go. Is that the right idea? It's kind of how I felt like it happened.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, so this is something I asked of you over the weekend was like, where do you feel like you need to go? Because in your life, I'm sure you have so many stories. But
Mhm. Yes, you don't live to 53 without making a bunch of stories.
yeah, yeah. So generally, we start with stories that, maybe core memories, of something that really sticks out to you starting in childhood and kind of work our way up, but it doesn't have to be.
And this was probably influenced by the fact that I happened to have come across a childhood journal, the day before we met, and I had been reading it out loud, mortified style to my family, and they were rolling on the floor with laughter because I was talking about 6th grade crushes, and then I had my 14-year-old journal, and I was in upstate New York at this, ballet intensive, and, I mean, it's not a mortified episode, so I won't get into the funny details, but it was pretty funny, but it had reminded me of who I was around 14. And the first story that arose in my consciousness, the first sort of thread, was what it was like to be a 14-year-old dedicated ballet dancer
Mm.
and a 15 and a 16-year-old ballet dancer. And so having the hours also to just tell somebody your stories is kind of like opening an old photo album. And it takes a lot of love and patience, I think, to stay with somebody as they share their photo album of memories with you. But it was actually so sweet to me to kind of thumb through this photo album of memories, but now with the lens of what wisdom are we scooping out of here? What explanations exist in my 14-year-old experience that pertain still to the work I do today and the way that I do this work. So, what we found in that early ballet identity was discipline, devotion, very intense, formative mentors, especially strong women, and that I was getting early lessons around excellence, perhaps even perfectionism, approval, and valuing transparency among the adults in my life. So, is that early how does that early story about my identity as like a 14-year-old ballet dancer and those themes of, discipline, devotion, excellence, approval, is that kind of how you expect the first stories to go?
We don't wanna come in with expectations because we're not trying to
Yeah.
guide your why. We don't want to have any biases. I am really there to be a witness to your story, and every time that when you tell those stories, that you are touching on your why, that's when we see visceral reactions, the
Yeah.
smile, that your eyes getting a little
Yes.
brighter, your voice changing a little
Yes.
bit. since I know you going into the process, I mean, I certainly wasn't surprised by, loving a challenge and all of your achievement stories. And
Hmm.
yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. What about you for the process? Was there anything that surprised you, like where you went?
I remember finding some areas of surprise. I mean, we kind of moved from that early ballet identity to relationships and authenticity, where the stories pointed toward recognizing the difference between what feels like a performance and what feels real, and a pattern of being drawn to depth and authenticity rather than being turned off, in other words, from ego and like narcissistic displays. We talked a little bit about my career evolution, how I went from dance to massage therapy to studying nutrition and then eventually to medicine. And what stood out in that trajectory was that the key turning points keep happening when others see potential in me and then name it for me. And that was actually really surprising. I hadn't seen that pattern before, but I now see like, oh yeah, here's an echo, here's a spiral. I didn't see the next possibility until someone else spoke the word and then it was like, oh, a something in the veil has dropped. Like, I did not think of medical school when I was a young person. It was as likely to me as climbing Mount Everest. I didn't think of it as a possibility. I wasn't interested in it because I didn't think of it as a possibility. But one day, one professor said, "You should go to medical school." And suddenly the veil lifted, and it was obvious that was my next journey. So it was like that happening over and over again, which was fascinating.
Yeah, going into this, knowing that you're somebody who is, I feel like, pretty in touch with who you are, it made me feel a little excited to be a part of uncovering something that you haven't maybe thought a lot about before or hadn't really considered. So I think it's really fun to help somebody have an aha moment. I love having aha moments, right?
I love a good aha moment. That's right.
Yeah.
We touched on my fertility journey and like this tenacity and persistence in the face of all signals to the opposite. And the fact that I even have a tattoo about this dauntlessness. Like my tattoo says, after the final no, there comes a yes. And on that yes, the future world depends. And we talked about advocating for my child, advocating as a fierce mama bear and choosing truth over comfort over and over again and acting on it and growing into this persona that tolerates discomfort and teaches other people to tolerate discomfort because the real is always better than the not real or the inauthentic.
That's one of your hows and how you show up for the people you care about. Kinda touched on this before, but the why is, like, the thread that's been running through your life this entire time, even before you had the words for it. It's a pattern of how
Mhm.
you're showing up and what you're drawn
Yeah.
to and what you notice that maybe other people don't notice, and it's not about what you do, but it's about the impact you have when you're at your best. So, when you've identified your why, with your why, you've found it, you've located it, and you have a sense of, okay, that's my why, and this is how I show up. That's when you're at your natural best self. And if you are put in a position where you have to live out of integrity with your why, then that's when a lot of problems show up. So I think there's something very beautiful about figuring out your unique needs to live your natural best self. Like,
Oh,
for me, when I found this process years ago, before there was even a course for me to be certified in this, I was on paper living a life that, like, I don't know, most people would be like, "That's cool, like, what's the problem?" But,
yeah.
I was a people pleaser. I still am, still working on that, but and I was doing the things people said, "Oh, you ought to do this, you ought to do that," and I was so unhappy. Start with why was the start of so much change. It wasn't overnight, right? Nothing's overnight, but the awareness. It's just you can't
Yeah.
do anything about it until you're aware of it. And
Mhm.
then I learned, oh, like these are my unique needs I need to be living my best life essentially, and these can be my non-negotiables. I used
Yeah.
to think that I had to learn how to conform to everybody else, and now after working with you and other coaches in your circle, it's just there's all these synchronicities, I guess, is what I'm getting at. I feel like the closer you are to your why, you just start seeing all these synchronicities keep popping up, and you know that you're on the right track, just like meeting you at the camp out, you know?
I think that the why feels to me also like this is just dropping in as an insight to try out, that it's also kind of an energetic fingerprint. Like there's an invisible energetic pattern. And when we are living aligned with that, then yes, we attract those synchronicities. And yes, we have that feeling of like I'm on the right path for me. I'm doing my work in the world. And having a why, for most of us in medicine, we had a why at some point to be of
Mhm.
service, and also to do hard things. And I find that the cross motives of the for profit US healthcare health system is often at a different, they have a different why. And so that generates a lot of the discord and intolerance of our circumstances in medicine as we move through it. I mean, as you know, I work a ton with people who experience burnout or, different circumstances that are burnout adjacent and are trying to figure out how can I exist with my why still intact and stay in medicine.
Yeah.
And I think this is a really beautiful way to look at that. The major themes that we uncovered for me, I have not really ever written them down in succession like this, but I loved seeing them together. So I value truth over appearances,
Mhm.
authenticity over performance and performative versions of living, challenge as a path to growth. Ooh, girl, I love to do a hard thing. You tell me something's possible, you might as well just wind me up. Oh my gosh. Like, stand back, hold my drink. I feel and value the need to be seen fully and quote unquote accurately. That doesn't mean that I am always seen accurately, but I value being seen accurately and I value seeing others accurately. And I am sensitive to when I am not being seen accurately. And I try to be quite sensitive to when others are not being seen accurately. I have a high value for protection and advocacy and psychological safety. And I refuse to accept limiting identities. I really like my entire work in coaching is about peeling back limiting identities and limiting thoughts. So those themes feel so powerful. They feel like medicine to me to see that and say that out loud. And so then you coached me on drafting a statement and we played around with different versions of words. And the version that came out was that my why is help me with this to elucidate the real so that people, myself included, can live a life of deep integrity and profound authenticity.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a beautiful moment. You definitely lit up, and I know we talked a little bit about, like, the words, elucidate
Mhm.
versus maybe even illuminate,
Mhm.
but elucidate was the right word for you, and that's all that matters is for you because, again, it
Mhm.
starts with your awareness, and it needs to make sense for you, and, yeah, that why statement, you're looking for what's your contribution and what's the impact. How did you feel? Like, what was your I know I got a sense of how you felt, but could you describe how you felt, like, saying that out loud?
It feels powerful. It feels exciting. It feels, not to be too meta, elucidating. Because it really was like, it is just showing me what is already real, but in a way that was quite succinct and concentrated. It's like an essential oil version. It's like the very reduced down to, its most pithy essence,
Uh-huh.
is how my teacher Jennifer Well would put that. And it feels like a mirror, and it helps me make sense of some of the choices that I've made. Like I've made choices to leave comfortable jobs or relationships that were not exactly horribly toxic, but they lacked some kind of deep grounding or authentic quality, and I could not tolerate the lack of that. So the hows came out of that, speaking truth directly, including speaking truth to power, seeing people clearly, trying to not black and white people and to remember that people are complex, even people I am in opposition to. Challenging assumptions is probably my existential kink. Like, I love to challenge assumptions. It really is, it's like part of Ani DeFranco's, long-term influence on me, like, "You don't know me. I will do the opposite thing." Advocating fiercely for what is right, for my patients, of course. I will go to the ends of the earth.
Well, and you could imagine, like, as you're saying that, imagine, you're as a doctor, well, you don't really have to imagine you know this as a doctor, but one of your requirements to be living your natural best self, living according to your whys, you need to be able to advocate for people. So if you work within an institution
Mhm.
that's making it to where you cannot advocate for your people, then that is keeping you in a place
Yes.
where you're not in integrity with your why. So it's like knowing your why statement and then knowing your hows. Your hows are how you show up for people, but it's also how you need people to show up for you. And
Woo!
so it's such a
Woo!
great yeah, so it's such a great tool so you can know like through my training when I was doing this training process, one of the why discoveries that we watched in training was a woman who was going through a why discovery with Simon Sinek and
Mhm.
they got to the part where she had her draft why statement, and then they were going through her house, and she very quickly realized, "Oh, so this is like if I'm applying for a job or negotiating a contract or something, I can utilize these in my negotiating. Like, yes, yes,
Mhm.
money's important, but also these are the things I need. I need to ensure that I'm going to be able to advocate for my people. I need to ensure that like there's
Mhm.
radical transparency. You mentioned in our why discovery was radical
Mhm.
transparency was
Mhm.
really important. Now that there might be like I'm not an expert in contract language or anything like that. There might be a different way to put it across, but it's something that you know that if you're going into a new position or whatever it is, these are the things you're going to need to do the very best job for them and for you. And if they can't guarantee you those things, then it might be worth looking elsewhere. Because when you
Mhm.
are in alignment with your why and all of those hows, I guess you could say, are met, that's where your greatest capacity lives. So your
Yeah.
capacity will expand by, a lot. If you're very aware of your why and your hows. And it's not
Mhm.
something you do overnight, it's a practice. You have to be committed to the process.
Yeah, and I think that was perfect. It reminded me too, like, the only times I've ever been in trouble, quote unquote, whether in residency or as a mature physician, is when my advocacy became threatening to an organization or a it was thinking of the word insubordination. They felt insubordinated because I did not kowtow or, like, toe the line, and that was my being a fierce, brave advocate in the face of what I saw as some kind of wrong or injustice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I imagine how that felt to be in that situation, to be with an organization didn't have your back and how that, and
Yes.
it certainly didn't help
It
you grow.
it grows cynicism. It grows, a tendency to believe that you're on your own, which I think is not always true, but, you know, it's it's one idea. And I'm thinking about when I've had the chance to advocate for patients outside the lines. I love that kind of the most, like when your family needed a medical advocate and I was
Mhm.
able to call people and say things that helped things happen, you know?
Yeah.
That gives me a lot of pleasure because it feels like serving the true, the good, and the beautiful. That is what it feels like.
Having you be a part of that process, that journey with us, I even beyond the parts that you actually like where you made a call or you wrote a letter, even beyond that, just you being on that journey with me gave me more confidence and empowered me to advocate for my daughter better. You gave me tools that I am totally certain that her quality of care she received, I don't know where that we'd be where we are right now without all those stars aligning, literally.
Yeah. Yeah. So, in closing our conversation, this why process discovery was really enlightening to me. It was very illuminating. Even though I have been stewing in the juices of why for years now, it just felt so lovely to have purpose named in this particular way. So if our listeners haven't read the book, that's a great start. There are, of course, people like Kelsey in the world who will sit and spend several hours doing a why discovery process with you. And there are other tools besides this one to kind of get to similar information, like when we do a deep dive into core values or craft a mission statement, which we often do in my group coaching containers. So, yeah, what else, Kelsey, would you like to share with our listeners today?
I think, given that I know a lot of you out there are coaches, this might just be a reminder, like you know this stuff, right? Like maybe it's not Simon Sinek start with why, maybe it's Enneagram or MBTI
Mhm.
or different assessments. But I think that even for somebody who's well versed or teaches us, having this reminder, I think it's a good check in because we know that change cannot happen without awareness. And sometimes
Mm.
we get so often like caught up in helping others that we kind of forget to do these things for ourselves. And I mean, I first read Start With Why. It's been, oh gosh, I don't know, maybe about 5 years ago now. I was gonna say 3 years, but I think I've been saying 3 years for a couple years. And it's a journey. So if you haven't started it, like, it's a journey and you're not gonna figure it out overnight, but I think that it's kind of a form of manifesting as well. Like, you're like, "Oh, this is my why, this is what I need." You get a sense of what's not working in your life, what does work, and how to continually move that way. And I will say that I got stuck for a few years in a zone that was I knew I needed to get out of. And there was like, it was kind of like I was going along, and then there was this really steep hill. And I was afraid, but where I'm at right now, after getting over this mountain is like, oh man, my capacity grew. I'm happier. My family, like everything's just better. I guess if anybody's feeling like they're nervous about that change they need to make, or I just hope to offer a little bit of inspiration or perspective on it's gonna, yeah, it's hard. It's hard and it might be scary, but I promise
It's worth it.
what's on the other side is better. And
Yes.
nothing bad will come of getting in touch with getting to know yourself better.
That's that's a good one. Yes, there absolutely nothing bad will grow from this soil. Thank you so much, Kelsey, for having this conversation
Yeah.
with me and also for the practice of the why discovery process. Really appreciate it. And I appreciate getting to share it with our Solving for Joy community. As always, friends, you know how to find me, Chrissy at joypointsolutions.com. And I am here. I have one spot available for one on one work at this time. And if you are feeling moved and called, this is the right time to contact me. Have a beautiful day. Take care of each other and keep solving for joy no matter what.